Hiya, I'm Amanda Prosser. I found myself involved in a bit of a Facebook discussion the other day that revolved around how I like to keep my FS5 camera rigged, and I thought I'd make a video that talked about that a little bit. So here is my FS5. This is how it generally lives in the bag, and I like this simple configuration because I can hoik it out of the bag, switch it on, and I'm ready to record within seconds. And for the kind of documentary work I tend to do, that's sometimes extremely useful to have the camera just instantly ready to go. So how's it put together? The FS5 has this useful side handle as standard, and you can control all the major functions of the camera from there. Very handy. I've got a Zacuto Z Finder, which I find useful for my elderly eyesight because I've got a nice big magnified image in there. If I don't have that on, I tend to find myself squinting over the top of my glasses at the viewfinder, and then I end up with a stiff neck. Not good. I've got a Rode Link receiver on the top. There's usually a wireless microphone or possibly a whole sound recordist and mixer on the other end of that, and then that's plugged in and ready to go on my second channel. And I've got a Rode NTG2 shotgunner microphone on the camera as well. Most of my filming happens out of doors, and so I've got wind protection on by default. But the key thing that I'm really here to talk about is this. This is an Arca Swiss 40mm plate, and I keep this on all the time. It's screwed on tight with 2 screws, so it won't twist, it won't shift. This is a kind of universal fitting almost. Lots of tripods and camera stabilization devices have a fitting that fits for that. It's really aimed at slightly smaller cameras than this, but this is useful and universal anyway. So for example, I've got this lightweight tripod that I might use if I really don't want to carry around a heavy job all day, and the camera will relatively easily slot into there and screw up. And with this lightweight configuration, a lightweight tripod like this is fine. It will just about balance, and the smoothness of the head is adequate for most things. If I really want to use the big tripod, I can still do that because I have this adapter made up from a small rig Vinton plate. Snaps in there. And a small rig Arca Swiss style quick release on top. And there is the camera transferred from one plate system to another without the use of any screwdrivers, coins, or indeed magic. And there it is, ready to go. So that's good for tripods. There will sometimes be those situations where you're shooting in a dynamic environment, as they say, where you can't use a tripod because you haven't got enough spare hands amongst your crew to carry it. You might be the crew all by yourself and you won't have enough spare hands to carry it. You might be shooting in a busy environment where there simply isn't space for a tripod, and if you tried to set one up you'd have people kicking it all the time, so you can't use a tripod. If you're only going to shoot 30-second, 2-minute pieces, you can continue to use it handheld, that's absolutely fine. But I can tell you from bitter experience that when you're shooting a talking head style interview and your talking head goes on and on and on, and because they've had a few too many drinks they keep going on and on and on, and they never give you a point at which you can stop and let the editor cut. After a few minutes of that, your arms and shoulders and neck and everything else, particularly your right elbow, will really let you know about it. So in those situations, forget the tripod, forget hand-holding, you need a shoulder rig. Did I say hand-holding there? Hand-holding. You need a shoulder rig. You can pay an awful lot of money for shoulder rigs for cameras like the FS5, which wasn't originally designed with shoulder rigging in mind. Small rigs is among the more economicals of them. Forgotten how to talk tonight. Small rigs is among the more economical of them, and this is it. So it's got your rails, it's got this base plate, which also has Arri rosette fittings on the side. It comes with a shoulder pad, and I think that's about it actually. I also have attached, oh, and it comes with this extension arm for the side handle. I also have, however, the trusty Arca Swiss 40mm quick release plate on the top. So when I want to shoulder rig, the camera can just go straight into that quick release plate, and the plate does up, and there we go. I can also put the whole thing on the tripod still, and I'm going to do that now because it will make showing you how to attach the side handle a little bit easier. So side handle comes off the camera. Let's lock the tripod head up and then it won't swivel off on me. And we unplug the LANC cable. We relocate the side handle to the extension arm, lining up the little white dots just like you do on a lens, and then it clicks into place. We reattach the LANC cable, and this is an important step, making sure that both ends of it are fully inserted, because if you don't do that, the side handle won't work and you'll think you've broken your camera. And just like that, your camera is now rigged for use on the shoulder. So up on the shoulder it goes, twiddle the side handle, we've got our viewfinder up, and there we go. And it's not as well balanced as it might be, in the sense that there's no weight behind my shoulder to counterbalance the camera in front of it. But it's not a particularly heavy camera, at least not with this lens on. And the way I have it built up, I can keep my elbows tucked in, so it's actually not too bad. And it's a lot more comfortable than just trying to hold it by the side handle and nothing else. So the last point I wanted to make really was one other advantage of having this intermediate step of adapting from the base plate to the Arca Swiss. One is that I can transfer the camera onto the shoulder rig without having to use any screwdrivers or coins or anything else, and you can never find one when you want one, can you? And another is if I want to use a lens that requires support from a rail rig. And I will show you that quickly. So we'll whip off the kit lens. I'll put the front cap on in a moment, I promise. And here is a bit of a monster. It's a Sigma 150 to 500. And this has a foot to support it. And you need to support it because the Sony FS5 has a plastic front plate that supports the lens mount, and if you try and hang a lens this big and heavy off that simple plastic front wall, it will sag. That's probably not good for the longevity of that plastic front plate, but not only that, if it sags, and it does sag, you're not having the camera look directly along the axis of the lens, it will be looking slightly off axis, which is probably not optimal optically. And also, just hanging the lens off the front of the camera like that is asking for trouble. If you put the camera down awkwardly or turn and bump into a wall or a corner or something, you're just asking to smash the lens mount out of the front of the camera body, which you don't want to do. It just happens that with this extra height made up by the Arca Swiss system in here, it raises the camera up from the rails by just enough that I can now support the lens's foot on something clamped onto the rails. And this small rig Arri Rosette adapter just happens to be just the right height to support the foot beautifully. It doesn't have to be one of those. There are various other gadgets that go on rails, including this one, which have sort of variable height support, and I've used this in the past to support a lens foot. So yeah, I find this small rig Arca Swiss 40mm plate system really useful for all those reasons. One other detail to mention perhaps while I think of it is that there's room to slide the whole rig back and forth a little bit, not only on the Vinton plate but also on the quick release plate here, because I've used a long plate on the camera. And so to get the whole thing balanced on the tripod, I've got those 2 degrees of movement to balance everything on the tripod. And that's how I make it all work. No screwdrivers, coins or magic were used in the making of this little film.